this is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so this episode is interesting, to say the least. So, the episode revolves around a new character, Irina Jelavić, who is going to be the foreign language teacher at Kunugigaoka Junior High's Class E. And the first time we actually see her, Korosensei, in disguise, is coming out of the grocery store with a bag of sweets when he sees her being harassed by some ne'er-do-wellers, she remarks that she's actually going to go to work, and the guys aren't letting her. At which point Korosensei decides to intervene, traps the guys in a car, and wraps it with ribbon so they can't get out. And sure enough, Irina is immediately all over Korosensei for saving her life, and asks him if he can escort her to Kunugigaoka, which he does, mainly because he's a teacher there and he knows where it is. So, at which point she walks in wrapped around Korosensei's arm, and sure enough, Karasuma reveals that she is indeed going to be their new foreign language teacher, which I've already explained, but she's basically going to be teaching them languages other than Japanese because they live in Japan. And they need to be able to communicate regardless of where they actually are. So they're going to be learning foreign languages from her, which is, and it's revealed why she's incredibly good at that, but I'll get to that in a minute. But in case the students can't help but notice just how clingy she is around Korosensei, and understandably, Korosensei seems to show us up with an unmistakable pink shade. He blushes like a human, particularly around women. And it's not entirely clear whether it's the fact that she's a human or the fact that she's a girl, but Korosensei is notably hot and bothered and a little bit smitten with her. So, sure enough, the students begin to wonder if that's a weakness, and Nagisa notes it in his notebook. So, but once Korosensei is out of the picture, he goes to play with the kids. It's revealed that what Irina actually is. Irina is a honeypot assassin, which, long story short, if you don't know what that is, and I don't expect you to, is basically she uses seduction as a weapon, and that's how she kills people. She uses her basically this is an actual thing, by the way. Basically, what happens is she uses her sex as a weapon. She uses her sex appeal as a weapon to lure her victims into a false sense of security so that she can kill them. So basically, she seduces her target, and then she kills them. And sure enough, Karasuma remarks that she needs to not only be an assassin but a teacher as well, since that's why she's there. But Irina notably writes him off, mainly because she doesn't think the octopus is gonna be alive long enough to actually, do any that she'll actually have to do her job. But spoilers, she's not dead by the end of the episode, so she kind of failed. But in any case, she comes outside to basically flirt with Korosensei and tells her that she knows he can move at Mach 20, and asks her to get some coffee from him, and he's more than happy to oblige, and then leaves. And the second he does, it's like a switch, and in front of the kids, she's immediately a different person. And as the students later lovingly call her, she's a bitch. Which actually does become a recurring bit throughout the rest of the series. They start calling her Ms. Bitch, because that's what she is. So, but yeah, she points out that she doesn't really want to be called Miss Irina or anything of that, particularly when Korosensei isn't around, and remarks that as long as they stay out of her way, they won't have a problem, and calls in her goons, which are revealed to actually be the people that harassed her at her car. So she basically planned this all from the start. And then to add insult to injury, she uses her kiss of death, is what I'm going to call it, but basically what happens is she kisses somebody multiple times until they pass out. And she uses it on Nagisa, which shocks all of the students, but very specifically Kaede, who is front and center for it. And sure enough, asks Nagisa to give her a play-by-play on his notes so that she can actually figure out a good way to actually kill Korosensei. And sure enough, he does. She meets him in the teacher's line before class and gives her 2 very important, specific pieces of information that are going to come in handy for when they actually try to kill him. Namely, they have to hit him. Namely, he can take damage. He can take damage from one of his tentacles, but he'll still be able to move at Mach 20. And Nagisa theorizes that the only way to actually defeat him is to destroy all of his tentacles all at once, or otherwise restrain all of his tentacles at once, which will make him unable to move. And also remarks that, surprisingly, despite not having a nose, again, I'll get to that as well, he's like a bloodhound. He can smell things despite not having a nose. Again, I'll get to that. But in any case, she's remarking on this while she's in class and isn't really interested in the whole teaching thing. So everybody start, and naturally the students start speaking up, pointing out that she needs a teacher, and they call her Miss Yellow Bitch a whole bunch, which eventually upsets her, and she forces them to practice the V sound to her name, Jelavić, not bitch, Vitch. And this is going to get demonetized, I can already tell. And sure enough, forces them to practice it for an hour, which upsets the students greatly. It's around this point where Korosensei finally comes back. At which point she puts her plans into motion. So she lowers Korosensei into the back shed, which she has set up with all of her guys. And basically what happens is she throws herself at Korosensei and draws his attention with her sex appeal, claims that she's going to go change behind a blackboard and then just let the bullets fly. So, and sure enough, the students, while practicing with Professor Kurasama, actually remark that she isn't the neatest to work with, and are also a little bit disappointed that Korosensei is falling for her stuff, hook, line, and sinker. And Kurasama points out that that's all fair, but points out that he's also kind of impressed about he also points out that the way she's been able to just spring an entire trap on her own is actually kind of impressive. So, but in case, here's what happens. She lowers him into the shed, holds his attention with her sex appeal, and then hides behind a billboard while he gets shot. So, and it works, sort of. So I should point this out. There's a reason that they actually use anti-sensei BBs to actually defeat him. So because as revealed later in the scene, once she finally comes out of hiding, regular bullets have no effect on him. Metal is just absorbed into his body and then melts. Case in point, when she comes out, she sees all of her hired goons knocked out, and Korosensei, with the exception of his uniform being all tattered now, is completely fine. He reveals to Irina and the audience that bullets actually don't affect him, and that's why they had to develop specialty BBs to actually hurt him. They can't kill him the normal way, so they have to use a very specific, very special material to take him down. So yeah, Irina's plan basically falls apart because she's unable to actually hurt him. But he also reveals that he actually does have a pair of nostrils, but although you can't normally tell unless you look really close. As it turns out, they share the similar space with his eyes, so it looks like he has 4 eyes, when in actuality he only has 2 eyes and 2 of them are nostrils. And she points out, and sure enough, he points all of this out, and then scolds Irina for being so unoriginal, and then points out that asks her if she read that if the dossier she read had any information about the fact that his preferred method of retaliation is grooming. And sure enough, we don't actually get to see what happened to her, but he basically does some interesting things. He gives her a full. What I should elaborate is the stuff that she actually tells us that he gives her a full body massage, changes her into a gym uniform, and does a thing with his tentacles that we're never actually told what he is. Nagisa specifically asks Korosensei to elaborate, and he doesn't. He just goes that he just says that adults have special needs. His face goes gray, and his usual big smile goes into a straight line. So it's implied that he did something interesting, but it's never actually stated what he did. So yeah, this episode is definitely gonna get demonetized. Well, it doesn't really matter. I don't get ads either way, but it's still gonna get demonetized. I can already tell. But in case he escorts all the students in for their next period, and Irina's just sat there reeling, trying to think of a way to take down the octopus. So, and sure enough, during her next English class, which is the next day, she begins scheming, trying to figure out a good strategy to actually take him down. At which point, some of the students actually speak up, telling her that if she's not going to teach them anything, that she should at the very least go get Korosensei, because he'll actually teach them, since they have entrance exams coming up and they kind of need to be prepared for them. But Irina actually remarks back that she feels like that would be a waste of time, because entrance exams are for people who have a future, and not so subtly implies that that's not them, and also points out that she'll strike them a deal, help them with her assassination plot, and she'll give them a percentage of the money. But unfortunately, she strikes several nerves, and the entire class riots against her. So, and also starts throwing things, and not so subtly tells her to get out. So yeah, she's thrown out of the room as Karasuma looks on in disgust, and goes into this faculty lounge to complain to Karasuma, pointing out that she shouldn't be treated the way she is, because she is a high-class woman according to herself, and that she should be treated with a modicum of respect. At which point Karasuma points out that she actually needs to learn to be more like a teacher, because she kind of needs to be more of a teacher as well as an assassin. And Irina naturally scoffs at him because she doesn't think he's serious. But then Karasuma escorts her outside and takes her to where Korosensei hangs out during 6th period. As it turns out, during 6th period every day since Karasuma got there, he prepares a test for everybody. But specifically, after Irina points it out, because he moves at Mach 20. That's been firmly established at this point, but she also remarks that it takes him so long to make tests, and is a little bit suspicious about the fact that it's taken him so long. At which point Karasuma chimes in. Every single test he makes is tailored to each individual student, which shocks her greatly. And Karasuma further explains that he takes into account every subject that they struggle with, which subjects they're good at, and creates tests accordingly for them. So, and sure enough, we get to see a little bit of the inside process with Korosensei's head, and he's doing exactly that. He's analyzing one of his students' grades and records, and is trying to create a test specifically for them. At Mach 20, might I add, but he's also doing it very slowly as well, despite going at Mach 20, because he's trying to make sure it's perfect. He's trying to make sure it perfectly encapsulates his student and helps them actually progress forward as students. So yeah, and Karasuma points out that while he may be a bit unpredictable and even a little dangerous, he's still a damn good perfect teacher. He's an almost near perfect teacher in every way except phys ed, which we've established, but he's still a pretty damn good teacher. And then Karasuma escorts them to the courtyard, and reveals that he actually invented a game called Assassination Badminton, which is basically they play a game with a little ball that's colored and stylized in the shape of Korosensei's head, and the students bat at it with cardboard knives. And sure enough, points out that she needs to learn to either be an assassin as well as a teacher, since everybody else has multiple roles as well, or she should just get out and never teach again. And at which point Irina decides, you know what? I'm actually going to be a teacher. And sure enough, goes in and understandably gives them a very adult line to analyze, but adamantly points out that I should mention the sentences, "You are incredible in bed," which is yes, but the reason she picks it is because it works as a good example, I guess. I think Nagisa points out that it's a pretty terrible example because it's a little too adult for junior high students, but she points out that she wants to that she actually does want to try and be their teacher now because as she points out, the freedom to communicate is basically a thing that everybody needs to do. They need to be able to learn how to better communicate with themselves, and Irina is actually perfect at this because she's a globe-trotting assassin. She's picked up a lot of languages. She knows a lot of languages, which of course makes her perfect for a world language teacher. So she's basically the perfect teacher for that. And also after explaining her reasoning for why she is the way that she is and why she's deciding to teach them now, I asked them if they forgive her for being a bitch. And sure enough, starting with Karma, everybody laughs in her face, pointing out that she's done a complete 180, and of course they're going to give her another chance. And she's happy, but then becomes moderately less happy when she discovers that her bitch nickname isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So yeah, she quickly becomes irate with them, and meanwhile Korosensei and Kurasama have been watching from the outside window, and Korosensei remarks that Irina is going to be a perfect fit for their little family, and points out that, and thanks Kurasama for bringing her in, pointing out that there's no one really better to teach the kids world languages than a globe-trotting assassin. At which point Kurasama realizes that somehow Korosensei managed to manipulate things in such a way to get Irina into the class, and is a little suspicious as to how he actually saw it coming, and realizes that it's a pretty weird dynamic that he's brewed up in this classroom, and that he's got everybody wrapped around his tentacles. So it's implied that Korosensei planned this from the start somehow. It's never actually explained how he managed to pull this all off, but basically he managed to get the perfect teacher for the job into his classroom to actually do a good job. And it's never really explained how he did that, but it's clear that he manipulated Kurasama or somebody else in some way to actually get them to bring in a world-class assassin who also happens to be a really good world language teacher. So it's implied that Korosensei knew from the start that this was going to happen, meaning he was just playing along the entire time. That's a little bit weird, and it's never explained how he did this, I should mention. It's just implied that he did, and Kurasama is just a little bit too concerned that Korosensei was able to manipulate the situation in such a way. But in any case, that's it. The main development of this episode is that now Irina Jelavić is going to be their world language teacher at Kunugigaoka Junior High's Class E. So she's going to be a recurring character going forward, and she's going to be an interesting character to work with because as we've established multiple times, she is a bitch. So this is going to be she's not the most easy person to get along with, and also she needs, now that she's integrated herself into Class E, she's now going to start taking her students a little more seriously and treating the students with respect a little more, as per Kurasama's request. But also it's going to be interesting because she kind of has, her entire thing is sex appeal, and she kind of can't do that anymore. So it's going to be interesting seeing what other creative ways is he going to try and assassinate Korosensei with her main draw gone. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting seeing how she bounces off the cast going forward, because now she's just kind of their world language teacher, and that's just a development that happened in this episode, and she's kind of not very good at it. So it's gonna be interesting seeing how she develops as a character going forward. But in any case, yeah, that's my review of Assassination Classroom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks I'm out by saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!